What's up, Ubisoft concept artist Vin Hill, and I am joined, as ever, by Mr. Christopher Jarvis.
Hello. I do indie games, by the
He's
way.
also an indie dev, of course, yes. Obviously, this week is going to be a little bit different because we're the format that we're sort of recording in this week, we're not showing an intro video because we're actually trying a new method, but we'll try and get the video back in there at some point in the coming weeks when we sort of figure out our growing pains to this new system. But this week, we are going to be talking about E3. We're going to be talking about E3 in a big review. So, Chris, do you want to sort of go over what we're going to be talking about in depth?
Yes, we're going to talk about Game Pass as a whole, Flight Sim, Forza, some Ubisoft games like Rainbow Six Extraction, Riders Republic, Redfall. We're going to talk about Battlefield 2042, Horizon Forbidden West, even though that wasn't really E3,
Yep.
and potentially what could Sony be coming up with in the next month or so. Nintendo kind of as a whole, at least for me. And then some things that we had no gameplay for, like Starfield and Breath of the Wild 2.
There were some missing players at E3 this year. Yep.
So that was the theme for E3 and as a whole for me, was no gameplay.
Right.
What we saw gameplay of was yeah, good, but it just wasn't enough of it.
Yeah, I guess like that's a good way to start, like before we dive into what we've been playing this week. But like just to sort of kick it off at the beginning of the show, like what was your overall sort of impression of E3 this year? Like was it a good one? Was it bad? Was it average? Like where does it sort of fall with you? Because that's pretty much what people want to hear, like at the very beginning, I guess.
Yes. It was, I mean, if you line them all up, it was bad.
Right.
But I'm not going to blame anyone or get upset about it because, you know, we've had this worldwide pandemic and that's totally understandable that it's going to be the worst E3. Like, if you were ever going to go, what's going to be the worst E3? I'll be straight after a global pandemic where there's been crazy changes throughout the whole world.
Yeah.
You go, yeah, that sounds fair enough. So, yeah, I think it was probably one of the worst ones I've seen. Only because of what we didn't see. Nothing really for much of what we did see was terrible. Just didn't see enough of the hype train. So the hype train just never really got going.
Yeah, I mean, I was personally expecting a lot more heavy hitters because I thought, like, because this was the year that new consoles are out, like, people really need to sort of throw their weight around and show people, like, yo, this is, like, you want to buy our console, like, please, like, check this out, we've got all this coming and stuff. And I thought this was going to be the year for them to do it, but I think you were right. I think it was just they clearly weren't ready because of obviously the unforeseen circumstances over the past year and a half, and they just weren't quite ready. That's my only real big takeaway from this. But saying that, there was a lot of good stuff shown as well. There was some great nuggets in there, which we will get into after we talk about what we're going to talk about next. So first, Mr. Christopher Jarvis.
Yes.
What have you been playing?
Oh, I finished God of War.
We need to talk about this first.
So Vin knows this, but he's pretending like he's surprised.
Finished God of War. There you go. That's my surprise face.
Yeah, I completed it. I loved it. It is amazing. It's just so good. It's been out for ages, and I don't know why I haven't played it. Do you know what I think it was? I think it might have been Girlfriend reviews, which I kind of get a lot of my reviews from, and I know I shouldn't because I'm the person playing the game.
That's a bad source. Yeah, it's a bad source.
So it's a bad
reviews.
source because I'm not going to be watching myself play the game. I'm just going to be playing the game myself.
Yeah.
But she kind of got bored that the boyfriend really loved the game and so did all the puzzles. So she was doing it from that third person perspective and that kind of rubbed off on me, but the puzzles I thought were great and I loved doing lots of all the different bits and pieces. After I finished the main campaign though, I just googled the cutscenes for the rest of the bits that I didn't do.
Terrible.
And then I just went down a deep dive of all the lore and like the making of, and I watched the makings of, and that got me right in the feels box as well. And you know, it's a great story, and it's, you know, the father and the son and their journey and their growth, and it's got just a great middle and end, great gameplay, great puzzles, great lore. That is just completely in my wheelhouse of enjoyment. So that was one of the best games ever, and I'm thinking about it for my second tattoo design. I've not even had my first tattoo yet. But I'm thinking, how do I get that axe design into a tattoo with all the Norse symbols and the jewels on there? That's what I'm thinking. So that's how good a game
it's an amazing game. Like, it was my game of the year in 2018 when it came out. Really excited about the sequel. Like, great timing for you, I guess. Like, you've just finished Horizon Zero Dawn. You just finished God of War.
And you've got a great year.
Both of those games coming out this year. Like, well, not this year, but within the next sort of 12 months. Probably the next God of War is probably going to be next spring, maybe summer.
Yeah.
So like you're lined up for greatness, as it were. No pun intended, because of obviously that's Sony's sort of catchphrase. But like, this is great for you, I think.
Yeah.
I think this is only good timing all around. But I'm glad you really enjoyed it. That's cool.
I think it's a great year for people in my situation where they were Xbox gamers, and then as the console generation ends, you grab a cheaper PlayStation and buy the big ones that have had time to be known as the great games of that generation.
Right.
So yeah, I'm working my way through like a list of critically acclaimed games, so can't go wrong really.
It's very cool.
What have you been playing?
This week I was playing. Well, I didn't get much playtime in general, just because of obviously with all the E3 stuff. It's very it's a busy time of year, so you gotta take what you can. But I got sort of not inspired, but I got sort of motivated to try out Forza Horizon 4 after we saw Forza Horizon 5 on the thing. I was like, yeah, it looks pretty and stuff, but like, do I really care about racing games? Probably not really.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I'll download it, because like the Forza Horizon 4 is actually set in England, which was nice for me because like I'm obviously from England, but I don't live there at the moment, so it was nice to sort of visit home through like the virtual world, as it were. I thought, yeah, it'd be cool to drive around like British landscapes and stuff and just like chill out and stuff. Holy crap, this game is fun.
Yeah?
Like, I had no idea. Like, nobody...
Is it on Game Pass?
Yeah, it's on Game Pass. Like, that's why I'm playing it. Like, I wouldn't have
So it cost you nothing to give it a go.
Right,
yeah.
And that's the beauty of Game Pass, right? Like, you just get to try these games out like this. Man, that game is a lot of fun. Like, I had no idea.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's just... And it's not like your typical, like, like, here's a car, go to the next race. Okay, now you're doing 3 laps around the same map over and over again. Okay, now the next race. No, it's like the way that the game's set up for people that don't know anything about Forza Horizon. I don't care about racing games. You don't care about racing games. Most people don't, but it has its niche sort of fan base, right? But the way this one is set up, it's basically an open world game, and it's just roads, and they've got a custom map, and you can go anywhere. And as you're driving around, you can either join a race, and there's different types of races. Like you can be driving along, and they're like, hey, we need a stunt driver for a movie, and you have to do this ridiculous sort of stunt. And then there's other ones which are very traditional sort of rally, like going through like the British landscape, like smashing into like farmers' brick walls and stuff that are 300 years old and stuff, because, as you do. And then there's other ones where it's even more traditional racing, where it's like on an actual track, and then you can go into the city of Edinburgh, like they've got Edinburgh in the game, and you can do some street racing there, and it's really like just diverse and different. So, but it never like gets so serious that it's not fun anymore. Like they very much understand. Like it's still a video game. Like it's not a car simulator. Though you can go down that route, you can bump up all the difficulty and change everything to manual and get the car seat and all that sort of stuff. You can go all in, or you can be like me, where you're just like, I just want to drive around and smash up some stuff or whatever, And like I've been having a blast with it. Like I think I turned it on like a Wednesday or something. I've put about 15 hours into this game already. Like I've just been driving around and having a blast with it. So yeah, highly recommended it. Anyone's into it, but yeah.
And does it still stand up now? Is it because you don't have a 4K? Do you have a 4K TV?
I have a 4K TV. I don't have HDR though. That's the other thing.
Right. Okay. So it's not HDR, but is it? What's the frame rate? Right.
It's 4K 60.
60. Okay.
Yep. So it was on the Xbox One. Looks absolutely beautiful. Like I had to go back and watch the Forza Horizon 5 stuff because, I wanted to compare it. Yeah. I wanted to know, like, cause this actually looks good already. Like, I don't really understand, like, what more else they could do with it. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot more that they can do with it, as I was reminded when I watched the video. But yeah, still looks absolutely fantastic. Like, well worth the time that you put into it. Like, so if you've got Game Pass, then just download it. Like, have a go. Like, it's actually really good.
So on our E3 coverage, when we were reacting to the rebooted, because it's like a reboot of Forza, we were reacting to laggy video, but the video that's actually on our YouTube video was the pre-recorded. So we're going, oh, this looks terrible, and it actually looks pretty good on the video stream. So yeah. Just a little note there. We weren't overreacting. Yeah.
But speaking of which, like you can go and check out all of our reaction videos to everything on E3. I think we watched all the big ones anyway.
Yes.
We had 4 reaction videos up, so if you're interested in any of that, then please go and check it out on the YouTube channel. We've got stuff there. But yeah, Forza Horizon 4, I was pleasantly surprised. Like, if anyone's listening to this and they've never like tried it, but they like sort
And you've
of
got Game
arcadey,
Pass.
and you've got Game Pass, like nothing to lose. I would recommend it. But
Nothing to lose at all. And that was one of the biggest things for me for E3 that helped seal the deal of what you said, which was important, which was they need to sell Game Pass and Xbox need to be showing lots and lots of games. And in comparison to everyone else, they totally did. Xbox showed like the most games, and they got that communication to me across of value for money. Like, get Game Pass, try all these cool games. And for me, for those 2 games, it was the Forza Horizon 5 and the Microsoft Flight Sim. Like, for the price of Game Pass, you just try them, dip in and have a bit of a fun and browse about for this amazing visual spectacle that's, you know, pushing the boundaries of the next gen at this stage in its life cycle.
Absolutely.
And I think that's, and then just the rest of all the games that Xbox showed for me was like, yeah, Game Pass is really good value for money. For me, it's going to be like, I'll have an Xbox and that will be my try games out console. And then the PlayStation 5 will be like PlayStation 5 exclusives. And then everything else will probably be Xbox. That's probably how I'm going to be. Yeah, and that's how you've been so far.
I pretty much slotted into that pocket perfectly. So like Xbox, like everything that comes out third party pretty much is a lot of it is coming to Game Pass these days. It's just inherently how it is. And I've just been trying out third parties and playing more third party stuff on my Xbox Series X. And then my PS5 is literally just sat there gathering dust, waiting for like these amazing first party games that are coming. And when they come, like the purchase of the PS5 will be worth it. But until that time, it is just sat there. And it's the same thing with Nintendo as well. Like I've got my Nintendo Switch. It's literally got dust on it right now because I just haven't touched it in months. But when a game comes out, like I'll play the hell out of it, and then I just won't touch it again for 6 months because it's just unfortunately how them systems are. But they've sort of like carved out these lanes for themselves at this point, where Nintendo is very much focused on nostalgia, PlayStation is very much focused on quality. Like when it comes, like once or twice a year. And then Xbox is just like the value that you get out of it, like for, as you said, just for trying stuff out and third parties and stuff. It's just there like to just try stuff out, and you're constantly jumping in and out, much like you do with Netflix. Like you wouldn't buy a box set for certain things, but you would definitely like watch, like you'd binge through stuff on Netflix, and that's very much how Xbox is sort of like the space that Xbox has sort of carved out for themselves. So it's just interesting dynamic between the three of them, which, as an owner of all three as well, it's nice to be in this situation where, okay, I can sort of see like how this ecosystem is sort of dividing itself out at this point. The only problem is, like, I understand, like, I am very much in a place of privilege in that I can own all three of these systems, so I can take my pick, and like I'm not stuck with just one, and I'm not looking over the fence constantly thinking, I'm going to miss out on that, I'm not going to be able to do this, I'm not going to be able to play that. Like, I understand that, and I think these consoles, like the way that they're designed right now, is very much to have all three almost. Like, it's very weird. Like, we've never really been in this situation before where the competition is sort of drifting away from each other. They're not really directly competing with each other anymore. Obviously, Xbox and PlayStation are a little bit, but it's not, like they are drifting apart, and it's really interesting that they're doing that, which is good and bad in a lot of ways, and it remains to be seen if Sony are going to react to that and bring out their own Game Pass to actually like come back a bit closer together and see how this comes about. But yeah, very, very interesting times.
I mean, in the last generation, I think the Venn diagram of people that had PlayStation and Xbox, and then the games that they missed out on playing, I think the biggest part of that Venn diagram would have been the section for Spider-Man. I think that was the game that most people would have wanted to have played across all the platforms.
Yeah, I think.
And so that's like one big game, like to the middle towards the end of the generation, and then right now, the beginning of this next generation, we've already got huge titles that people are really not happy about. So the fact that, you know, God of War and Horizon have got this reputation now, that is crossing over into this generation, and so people are going to be wanting to play that on PlayStation. But then we've got, you know, Bethesda on Xbox now, and the anticipation at least is high for that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it seems like this gap is widening that started in the last generation, and I don't think it's a good thing.
Okay.
Because I think it's going to be more divisive,
Mm.
and I think the internet's just going to get more toxic, and I think it's like putting up the walls of division between people.
I 100% agree with this. Yeah, I mean, I've been complaining about this like on Twitter and stuff, just like the toxic fanboyism that is happening right now between Sony and Xbox specifically. Like, it was really strange last generation. It was very much just the Nintendo toxic fanboys, because there was a lot of them as well, and they were just constantly attacking people like either defensively or offensively for whatever reason. Just like, oh, we're better than you because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, just shut up. Like, just everyone just enjoy video games. Like, yeah, we've got criticisms, we've got problems like that we're trying to like, you know, raise awareness to, but we're not like saying we're better than you just by default. Like, that's just a stupid like way of looking at this. And yeah, I think you're right. I think what this is unfortunately doing, like, you're seeing a lot of, you know, Sony ponies and Xbots, these sort of things getting thrown around, and we hear it a lot, and it's just like, just would you just shut up and go away? Like, I hate these people, and it just like they make the industry worse, and I don't like that we're heading this way, but it's unfortunately what happens when you set up camps like this distinctively, as you said.
Yeah, and did you see that article about the Xbox people apologizing to PlayStation owners that they won't be able to play? They won't be able to play
Starfield, right?
Starfield.
Yeah.
And all the other Bethesda games on PlayStation.
Yeah.
And then the way that was taken, like, people took that every way possible, like, don't pity us, or like, why are you apologizing, or like, you didn't mean that. Like, everything that's toxic that you could possibly interpret in that article, you saw online. And the one thing I probably know, I don't know what the intention was, but the one thing I do know is it probably was along the lines of, I just want people to know that I'm sorry that this is the situation. Like, I don't want people to get upset, and then like an apology is toxic these days.
Right.
That's the kind of...
Well, this is the problem. Like you say, anything from the perspective of like a games company or publisher or a developer or whatever, no matter what they say, it just gets twisted and converted, and just the opposite is presented by other people. And it's just like, can we just be decent about this and actually look at what they're actually trying to say, like, officially, and just say, okay, we're sorry that everyone can't enjoy our games anymore, but this is the deal. Like, this is like, this
is the reality of the situation,
right? And we're not like, we're sorry that you can't play games, but it's just how it is. It's not them. It's not them like bowing down to like other people. It's not them like apologizing for whatever reason. It's just them saying, we're sorry that you can't enjoy our games as well. Like, we understand, but like, we're on Game Pass now. Like, we're with Xbox. This is just unfortunately how it is. We hope you can understand. Like, that's the sort of feeling that they were going for. But you're right. It just devolved into this toxic sort of, wow, they were actually saying this and they were actually meaning that. And when they said this, they actually mean that. It's like, just shut up. Like,
PlayStation.
Right. And it's not. It's just like, sometimes they just are sincerely. Like, maybe I think it was Pete Hines that said this, the guy that runs Bethesda Game Studios. I don't think Pete Hines really meant that as a slight towards Sony. Like, they've had a good relationship over the years. They've obviously made a lot of money together. It's just a ridiculous thing. Like, I genuinely believe that Pete Hines is genuinely sorry that everyone can't play their games anymore. It's just, that's just, and it's like you said, the fanboys pick it up and run with it.
Yeah, it's sad. It's a sad stage at the moment. Hopefully we'll have some changes and some clarity, and maybe when the world comes out of lockdown and people get together and talk face to face, that might make a difference.
So. I sort of have this theory as well. Like, I think people are just really high strung right now because everyone's stuck in their houses just reading social media all day, so I get it. But I hope this comes to a conclusion at some point or another.
So what have we got next? So Ubisoft games. So
that terrible publisher. Oh my god, I can't believe you want to talk about them. They're just the worst. Have you heard about their developers? They're just terrible people.
I think their developers are really, really nice.
Aww.
And I like them.
Full disclosure, if you're like, this is the first episode you've ever listened to, I work at Ubisoft. It's just a joke. Like, we're just which is playing.
And you've been working on Rainbow Six Extraction, as it's now
I
called.
have. I can finally talk about this. Well, not
You can talk
about
about
it, but I can say that I'm working on it. I guess like that's been working on it for the last year and a half. Even though like the way that the reaction was a little bit, it was something. I'll give them that. But what did you think about it?
Well, I've not heard any bad press, which is good for me, I suppose. And I hope you're not. That's just do you know what? Because it's because if it's not coming from Ubisoft, I know my opinion, and I get to speak to a developer.
That's fair.
So I've got the whole spectrum of information that I need. I don't need anyone else's. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
If I've got any questions, I'll ask you about it.
Yeah.
And then I'll make my own decision. But I really liked it. I think it looked great. I think it looked more than a year and a half worth of work.
Yeah.
To be honest, it looks pretty far along, if you ask me. I'm really excited for it. It looks fresh, exciting, looks new. So I'm really hyped for that. And maybe we'll play on it soon.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's out on September 12th, 13th. Can't remember. It's near the middle of September. I remember that. Anyway, because we've just been because we've been hammered into us internally that September. I don't know the exact date. I think it's the 12th. I'm not sure. But we'll definitely play it. But I mean, I'm excited about it. I think there's a lot of stuff which is sort of people don't know about yet. I think the way that it was presented probably could have been a little bit better for the fans that were expecting more away from Siege, because a lot of people there's a lot of complaints about people saying that this game looks like just
it's too similar to Siege,
right? It looks like an expansion pack. There's not enough different, and there is a lot different. It's just we just haven't shown it all yet.
It just hasn't shown up. But this is the thing, you got to cater for everyone, I suppose, haven't you? So you got to cater for people like me that haven't played Rainbow Six Siege,
right?
So to me it looked great. And if you went into nitty gritty about how it's different from Siege, that probably would have been a bit more boring for me. I'd have gone, why are you telling me? Are you telling me what's different to another game? So you can't win. You're right. Yeah, there's no way you can win with these sort of things.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen both sides of the fence as well. There's I've had people reach out to me on Twitter and be like, "Oh my god, this is exactly what I wanted. This is a PvE player versus environment game where you're working together really tactically. You're not it's not wacky arcade Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood. That's obviously our competition for this year because they're out in October. I think it's a month after us, and so they're different ends of the spectrum. But there's a lot of people that were looking for this type of game where it's a bit more thorough and tactical in that respect. It's not just chaos all the time, which it can divulge into that. But it's just a very different experience to what people were sort of probably expecting. But remains to be seen. Hopefully the game does well. I'm really excited to finally get out into the public hands and see what they genuinely think of it when they play it, and then not just obviously we've had a lot of media backlash based on what we showed, but I think there's still a lot more to show, and I think there's a lot more to come as well.
Well, I mean, the fact that you had probably some of the most minutes put into gameplay of the whole of E3, I think says something, and I reckon that's something to celebrate. You had some fair amount of gameplay in that video, and the rest of E3 hardly had any. So that's where you get my respect for that, Mr. Ubisoft. Thank you.
Yeah, it was all me.
Yeah.
No.
You're I think we need more gameplay. I think Chris is going to want some more gameplay.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Riders Republic. That was my pleasantly surprised game.
Me too, actually.
The more I saw of that, again, big chunk of gameplay. Well done. The more I saw of it and the more gameplay that was shown, the more I was like, that's interesting. Because on the surface, it just seems like, oh, you've got a few different modes, you've got a few different tracks. That could be fun. Yeah. It's no, there's loads of tracks. There's loads of gameplay modes. There's all these different ways to play the game. That just seems like there's going to be something for everyone.
Yeah.
There's going to be the arcadey jump in and see what happens sort of thing. It almost seems like it's the game designed for Game Pass. It's multiplayer, there's lots of people, lots of different game modes. There's something for everyone. Have fun, jump in and have a little play.
Yeah.
Which I'm really excited about.
Now the game looked absolutely great. I couldn't
Yeah.
I was actually kind of blown away by it because I haven't seen any of it internally since we saw it externally last year at E3. And it was funny, when one of the guys that we know on Twitter, Raf, shout out to him, and he was
Yeah, hey Raf.
he was he mentioned, like, he sent me a message at one point and he was like, yeah, I'm in the beta at the moment, am I allowed to talk about it because of the NDA? And I was like, yeah, you probably shouldn't, like, wait until E3 is over and then you can sort of like talk about it, because obviously I'm an employee, he's able to talk to me about that. And
Right, that must be nice.
yeah, so it was, but he was really excited about it, and I was like, oh, okay, like, if he's excited about it, it must be decent, like, I haven't seen it. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, like, this is, like, kind of cool. There's actually quite a lot here to sort of sink your teeth into, and I never like, really wasn't expecting as much as we saw, you know. So it was, yeah, pleasantly surprised. I'm actually really interested in that game.
Yeah. And then Redfall, that just looks so intriguing. I know it looked all pretty much like cinematic trailery. Don't know how much of it is going to translate into the actual game. But we know it's going to be like a multiplayer game. But it looks like you've got different class systems and the characters are really cool.
Yeah.
The really cool thing I've seen is that there's lots of love for the like the black woman in that game that looks like she's kicking some ass.
Yeah.
People saying about representation, how they're happy to have that sort of character in like a big game from a big publisher pushing it out across the world. So kudos for that. That seemed pretty cool, and the game just looks really interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm really I mean, it, like, weird side story, I guess. I randomly worked on that game like 3-4 years ago, and I didn't realize until after we saw it, because like when I was working for a company called Frame Store, who work on a lot of visual effects stuff for like cinematics, and they do commercials and they work on movies as well. Like they do a lot of the Marvel movies and stuff. And I was doing a lot of freelance work for them, and I was a part of the team that was working on a pitch document for what would become Redfall. And I had no idea, because like the game was very different back then. It was still set in like New England. It was still set like in Massachusetts or whatever, and it was still vampires. And then there was still like it was still very much the same, but it was a lot more gritty and a lot more grounded, I guess. And when we were working on the pitch, the pitch like got moved around, and I eventually didn't end up like. I think I finished one of the images, but I didn't finish the second one or something. It was very weird, like sort of like the way that these sort of freelance houses work. But yeah, I randomly worked on this game. Like, I probably won't be in the credits because it was like long before the game even got green lit. But yeah, it was fascinating to see that thing like just looking very, very different to how it was sort of presented to us in the beginning, because it was a lot more gritty and grounded, like when it was first realized. But like, I'm glad the direction that they went into it gives it a bit more flavor.
And so those images that you did, which was not part of the official like production of the game, are those then like buried forever? They'll never see the light of day? Because
probably, yeah. I mean, that's how it goes for pitch documents a lot of the time, because they're just trying stuff out. They're trying to like ginny up new ideas, and that's probably why Avalanche Studios hired Framestore to do these images, because they probably wanted, like, okay, if we just hire an external house and then they can come up with ideas as well, and we can sort of figure out like which direction we want to go into as well. We'll do our own stuff internally, and then they sort of just choose, and it sort of helps them filter down like the sort of direction that they want to go into. Yeah. And just being a part of that process, it's just very, very, very strange. And I didn't realize until like, I kind of had an inkling at the time, but I didn't want to say it like live while we were watching the stream, just in case I wasn't, because that would have been.
Was it like uncanny, like something like my spider sense is tingling when I'm watching this game?
It
and
wasn't
you just thought it was hype.
Yeah, I mean, I saw like when I saw like the Massachusetts thing, like because the setting was very much New England. That was how we were heavily pitched on that. But the way that the game was pitched, it was like everything was sort of in perpetual nighttime, and there was a constant eclipse going on, and that's like how the vampires or whatever were sort of operating, and that's how they were able to operate, and sort of prey upon people, and you're playing in this 4-person squad to sort of like push them back. And I was like, oh, that's cool, that's very cool. And then like it didn't fully click when we were watching the trailer until I saw the eclipse at the end, and I was like, holy shit, like I worked on that game. Like I just everything flooded back, and it just like, oh crap, yeah, I totally forgot about this thing, because it was years ago. It was literally 3-4 years ago that I worked on it. So yeah, very strange. But yeah, like short story aside, but yeah, looks very, very cool.
I mean, you probably, don't know whether or not you can say this or not, but I would be like, if I was you, I'd be like finding who the concept artists are of the game for Ubisoft and going, hey, I worked on this when I was over here, now I've seen it on E3, so like, just thought I'd say hi and well done. No,
they don't care. I mean, it's all very disconnected in that respect, but not in a bad way. Like it's the business.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, so that's the Ubisoft ones I had. Did you have anything else to add about how you thought the Ubisoft E3?
No, I mean, I was disappointed that they didn't show Beyond Good and Evil 2. I think that was the big sort of omission. I really wanted to see that game. I was really curious to see how far along they come with it, because even though I work there, we don't see everything internally. Not unless you're working in the studio. Like if you're working in the studio that's working on these games, then more than likely, like you just come across it. But I dodged that bullet, I guess, because we're not, like, Ubisoft Montreal don't work on Beyond Good and Evil 2 as far as I know. We might have a small team there, but like nothing ever like circulated around the studio.
Seen.
So I just haven't seen it. I literally haven't seen it for 2 years, and I would have loved to see it, because action adventure games, open world action adventure games, are my favorite, as it were. So
yeah, that's my jam too. So it is a shame. That was missing. So that is a shame.
Yeah.
Battlefield, though, for me, that was like the surprise hit. Like I wasn't expecting much, and then it was silly, and then the more I saw, the more it kind of grew on me, and then the more I thought, do you know what, this could be dead fun. And that a lot of people and Twitter seemed to agree with me. Like it seemed to be one of the big hits of E3, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
With a lot of hype going over, because originally I was wanting it to be like Dunkirk or like gritty World War II and go down that route.
Well, but, I think you'll still get your prize in that respect, though, because it's heavily rumored that the next Call of Duty is called Vanguard, and I think that's set during World War II. So you may get it. Yeah,
I might get it. So I might be spoiled for choice. I might be able to like wingsuit out of a tornado, zip line onto a building, crash some helicopters, and then have a bit of gritty World War II drama shooter.
I'm good with both of them options. I'm glad that they just went completely in opposite directions. One set in their future, one set in World War II. This is great. More for me. Like, I love it.
Yeah. So. Num. Eat it all up.
I do. But yeah, no, I'm super excited about Battlefield. I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be a great game. I think they learned a lot of lessons after Battlefield 5, because that one wasn't received as well. Still a good game. Wasn't nearly as good as Battlefield 1, though, I don't think. I think they've taken the time. They should rectify the issues which they had in Battlefield 5 in this one. So I'm super excited. I think it's going to be great.
We reacted to that video, and our reactions, looking back in comparison to what I've seen online, were very subdued. We were going, "Oh, that's fun," and we were laughing and joking. Some videos of some people are just like off their chair, screaming. They're off camera. They're crying. They're sweating.
Yeah, but how real is that? Or is that just them like trying to get the clicks? You know, that's.
But then I just think, oh yeah, but we're English, so that is us.
There is that
exploding, basically. We go, oh yeah, that is.
We
us.
almost spilled our tea. It was just all over the place.
That's maximum like exuberance.
Yeah, that's fun. But no, really, really excited about that game. I think it's going to be great.
So yeah, looking forward to that. For me, Horizon Forbidden West, even though it wasn't in E3 and it was before E3, I thought that was like laying down the gauntlet. Like, let's see what we can. This is what we've got.
Yeah.
You know, now it's on you. And that was ballsy, considering that Sony said they were going to be going after E3, and then they released a video before E3 with Horizon Forbidden West gameplay. We got gameplay of a really hotly anticipated video game.
Yeah.
And it looked like everything that the fans wanted.
That's true.
And I just think, was that the highlight of E3 that wasn't even E3? Well, for me, it's like the most anticipated game.
Well, it would be. I mean, you're off the back of Horizon Zero Dawn, so you've just played that game. You're super excited about it. Like as you mentioned,
I'm going to get Aloy.
You're going to get an Aloy tattoo. Yeah, I mean that's as big as an endorsement as it gets. So yeah, of course, like we're excited for it, but
yes,
yeah, it's strange. I mean, I think Sony played their cards well as they could anyway. Like considering they said that we're not going to be at E3. They put out that Horizon Zero Dawn video just to say, hey, we're still here, we're still relevant.
Yeah.
You know, that was them. That was a very political move in terms of like strategy and how they market stuff out. Very clever. Otherwise, E3 would have just been constantly talked about like, oh, Sony are absent, like Sony don't exist, like we're Sony, like all negative stuff for Sony. But like them getting ahead of the curve and actually putting this stuff out a little bit early, did them a world of good, I think. Like, and I think they'll have a lot of good stuff to show when they do have their official sort of E3 state of play. And I say E3 because as much as like as close as they might get to E3, they're not a part of E3, and I'm still kind of annoyed that they're like trying to take the high road out of it, because
that's what I was going to ask.
Part of it.
It's kind of like they're having their cake and eating it too. Like they're doing a little teaser before, so they're kind of bookending it.
Yeah.
And they're doing that without
officially being
talking to the games industry, without getting permission, without considering gamers as a whole community. They're only thinking about PlayStation owners.
Yeah.
So is what they're doing anti-gamer?
Is it anti-gamer?
As like a culture? Are they just thinking about their back pockets and not thinking about the industry as a whole? Are they pushing up the barriers and driving separation between the rest of the gaming community?
I get the feeling that
business is business.
You're going with it, but I don't think they're being anti-gamer, but I do think they're being very anti-games industry, and I think that's the sort of like the key difference. Like they, like you said, they care a lot about PlayStation owners, but they just do not care about the games industry. They're trying to like sort of, they're basically doing what Rockstar did years ago, which is they're sort of saying, we're better than all of this, so we are our own thing now. We're not a part of the gaming community, and we're not a part of the games industry. We are our own thing because we're just that good now. We don't need to be a part of this weird system that you've got where you have to go to E3. Like, oh my god, like you peasants. And that's the sort of arrogance that it sort of radiates out of them, and it's very, very annoying. And it makes me like almost not want to support that a lot of the time. Like, it's like, do I want to, like, if we weren't running a podcast or whatever, like I might not even watch it live. I might just like watch it afterwards just out of spite, so I don't give them the numbers and stuff like that.
Of the live figures,
it's that sort of thing, because like at the end of the day, like the gaming community is like what's important here. Like just everyone coming together, because E3 isn't exciting because like we're all just sat there watching trailers and like, oh, that looks good, oh, that looks bad. Like, oh, yeah, that is what we do. But the reason why we love E3 is because it's a celebration. Like, it's everyone coming together and enjoying video games as this massive of block. And it's like, oh my god, look at how awesome this industry is, and look what we can do with it. And the fact that Sony just sort of, nope out of that because they think they're high and mighty is just sort of, I just don't like it. Like, there's nothing nice about that, and
there's nothing good that come off the back of those tactics. Because if Xbox did that, all that would happen is that the whole thing would be disjointed and everything would get up in the air. So it's almost like they're forcing Xbox's hand in a way. In that if everyone, this is the way I like to think about a moral dilemma. I think, what if everyone did the same thing?
Right.
And so if everyone did what PlayStation have done this year. So if Nintendo did like sort of in May time, did a trailer for Breath of the Wild, and then like in July did like a couple more, like another thing, and then if Xbox did the same thing, we're spreading out across 3 months. There's
basically what happened last year. Yeah.
Communal feeling. And yeah, no one said, oh yeah, last year was a great E3, did they? No one went, oh my god, that's the way to do it. There's no more. This is the start of something new. What were we thinking all of that time, going into a big room and listening to orchestras and playing orchestra music versus live gameplay and live demos and that sort of community spirit.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's just very strange to me, like, because the fact that even though Nintendo were the first ones to sort of switch to digital and do the digital event only sort of thing, even though they did that years ago, they're still a part of E3. Like, they still go within the window of E3, even if they aren't ready. Like, it could, like, we're probably going to talk about it in a bit, but like it could be argued that they weren't ready this year. But even when they're not ready, like, they're still willing to be a part of the community and be a part of the conversation and during this celebration of video games. And the fact that Sony just decided not to do that it's just sad. Like, that's the only word that really comes to mind. It's just sad. Like, I don't agree with it. I think they should be a part of the conversation. They should be a part of the community. And it'd be nice
because now all that's on my mind is what's Sony gonna come up with now. And it's almost like that they win by default, because that's the first thing you thought of and the last thing you thought of.
That's the worst thing about all of this. Like, as gross as it is and as much as I disagree with it, it will work. And they've got a lot of eyes on them, and they will they will stand out when they do their state of play, because it's probably going to have some killers in there. There's going to be some like big hitters that are going to be like, oh my god, look at that. Can you imagine how that's going to look, and all of that stuff. So it's going to work out for them. That's the worst thing about all of this. Like the fact that strategically it is a good idea, like in terms of marketing and business and how much money they're going to make and how many viewers they're going to get. All of that this is good business. But it's still very, very gross, and I just don't like it as a gamer. Like as part of the gaming community, it's just gross. That's the only way I can really describe it. It's the only word that ever comes to mind. It's gross. It's sad. Like I wish they came back.
Yeah, I mean, in my ideal world, they would share the stage and take the piss out of each other face to face, and so it's like, yes, we're rivals. Yes, we're competitive. Yes, we want to make money, and we know that money's going over there and want it to come over here. But if you stand on the same stage and do it on a public stage, like, you know, a public forum, it's a lot more healthy, in a way. And I think that's a real shame. That's not.
Yeah, it
that's not going to happen.
We'll see. I mean, we'll see how state of play goes. We'll see next year, because next year is, I think the ESA already announced that they are going to be returning to a physical conference next year, which is very, very cool. I'm very excited about that. I hope that does sort of drag everyone back, because having PlayStation and EA not be a part of that is just sort of depressing and sad. Like, even like when EA were doing their own thing, even they would have their event, even though it was not officially a part of E3, they would still have their event in
just
the same
across
week.
The road.
It was just it was like a couple of miles away. Everyone had to get in the car and go over there, which still sucks. But I get why they did that, because E3 costs a lot of money, and like the booth space and all that sort of stuff. I get it, but them having it in the same week, that's the best thing about it. So I hope more people come back together next year.
Yes, hope so. Nintendo, like you touched on, were they ready?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
I mean, people are losing their minds over Metroid, which is cool. Like, well done.
Yeah,
I didn't get it.
Yeah,
nostalgia again. Like, fine. I mean, yes, nostalgia. Yes, Nintendo wasn't ready, but we got nostalgia.
A lot of nostalgia, a lot of remasters, a lot of remakes.
We saw it coming though, didn't we? But
I mean, it's the same every year with Nintendo.
But I thought we'd have a new Mario IP, and and there's that Mario game, but it's not. It's the role-playing game with Ubisoft, isn't it?
I was fully. I mean, well, I guess that counts in that respect. But I was fully expecting more from Breath of the Wild. Like, I thought that game was way further along. I thought that was a holiday 2021 game. I thought that was ready to go. I thought this was their time to blow it out. They weren't ready. And I guess, as we were mentioning before, like, obviously the circumstances of this year, over the past year and a half, of like, obviously how difficult things have been during the pandemic, I fully understand why they've gotten to that point. It's just, I think they could have done a better job of subsiding expectations a little bit, I guess, because there was a lot of Nintendo fans which absolutely exploded over certain things. Very, very niche things. Like, there was someone on Twitter that I know that is just absolutely obsessed with Advance Wars, absolutely obsessed by it. And then when they announced that, it was just like, it blew his mind.
Their dreams have come true.
Like, this is the greatest E3 moment ever, and I'm just looking at this game like, it looks like a mobile game for $60. Like, I just don't get it. Like, I'm not a part of that base, but I respect, like, other people are super excited about this, and that's sort of what Nintendo have always got. Like, every single person has got one IP within the Nintendo sort of franchise
with the core fans,
right? That they just they will explode over this one little thing that's sort of put in the middle. Meanwhile, we're just watching this stuff go by and like, that looks alright, I guess. Like,
it's like, it looks okay, looks okay.
Fine. Meanwhile,
but Nintendo have never been, we are the best visuals of anything, have they? They've never tried to be that, which is fair enough.
Yep.
But there's one of my mates on Twitter that said he was literally shaking after watching the Breath of the Wild trailer, and it's like,
good for you.
Okay, I didn't know that those images could have that emotional response, but I'm glad that happened for you. And I guess some people just wanted it to be confirmed in their brain that it exists,
right?
That it's going to happen. It doesn't matter when it's going to happen, and for them, it didn't really matter what they saw. I mean, they saw that they were, Link flying through the sky, and it seems like it's going to have verticality, and the sky's like Skyward Sword.
Sure.
Not many people like Skyward Sword though.
Easily
It's,
the worst Zelda
it's
game.
considered to be clanky, isn't it?
It's really bad. Like I just don't think it's a good game. Like at all.
Yeah.
Like I played most of the Zelda games. Like since Link to the Past, I went back and played the original Legend of Zelda. Played Zelda 2. Played both of the Game Boy Color games, the Season games, and Ages. Played Zelda. Played Zelda on 64. I played it on GameCube. Played Wind Waker, Majora's Mask. Like I played most of the Zeldas, but Skyward Sword was by far the worst game. Like it's just clunky. It's weird. Like they were trying out too many mechanics. Like you had to rely on the Wii controller, which was absolutely horrific to play a Zelda game on. Like you had to like aim on and like swing your sword.
Do a sword like that, yeah.
Just not fun. Like I just did not enjoy this game. And there's a lot of people that agree. I'm not saying like my opinion is like the gold standard or anything. Like obviously people still enjoy the game like enough to buy the port or the remake or the remaster or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was not expecting them to do a fully blown sort of port of this game because it's by far the worst one. I just don't know if it's gonna sell.
But Breath of the Wild 2 is, yeah. To me, I didn't see anything that made me go, this is a sequel. This looks.
It had a couple of
good to
nuggets.
play.
It had a couple of nuggets like the teleporting through the floor and things like that. That was a new mechanic, and then there was obviously like the verticality, like the way that all the floating islands are above the world and things like that. But it looked very, very, very similar to Breath of the Wild 1.
Yeah.
Which is the most ironic, hypocritical thing which I've seen about the games community in a long time. Because in one breath, they absolutely destroy our game for like, oh, it looks too much like Siege. It just looks like an update. It doesn't look like you've done enough. But then Breath of the Wild 2 gets shown, and it looks pretty much identical to Breath of the Wild 1. Like even in some scenes, same clothes, same armor, everything.
Yeah.
And everyone's excited about it. There's IGN videos breaking it down, top 8 things that you missed in the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer. I'm just like, this is fucking insane. Like it just looks like Breath of the Wild 1. And I'm sure it will be an amazing game when it comes out. Don't have any doubt about it. But what they showed looked really,
yeah.
There wasn't
For someone that hasn't,
there.
for someone, I mean, this is the thing. Like, Nintendo must understand the economy of that sequels, 10 big budget sequels have the capacity to be way more profitable than the original game because they've got the establishment.
I agree.
So myself included, like I've not played Breath of the Wild 1, but if Breath of the Wild comes 2 and is critically acclaimed, I will probably I'll buy a Switch and buy both and play both.
Yeah.
But I'm not there yet with 1. Mainly just because of money, to be honest. Just can't afford to buy a console right now.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So they didn't appeal to me, like, at all. Or they just couldn't physically because they weren't ready. I don't know. It's an interesting one. Like, what I saw didn't take my breath away. And some people had this physical response where they were shaking, and it's like, okay, there's a disconnect there. I hope I'm just missing something. I hope that I just was in this demotivated state, and they did that though, Nintendo, when they were saying, oh, this is going to be the last thing we're going to show you today. Oh, it's the Zelda handheld thing, which kind of looks pretty cool. I might give that a go.
Yeah.
Depending on how much money it is.
Yeah. So as well, I mean, that is the unfortunate circumstance when it comes to Nintendo. When they have their conferences, they show all this, the remasters and the remakes, and they rely on nostalgia and all this sort of stuff, which is great. Like, it's cool that people are still into this sort of stuff. But then the other side of that really is the fact that a lot of this stuff is going to be full price. Skyward Sword is a $60 game, which is kind of a kick in the nuts, considering that game is really not that much different. Like,
was the original game even that much money?
I think it was about that much. But if you take inflation into account, then it was probably a lot cheaper. So they're actually making money off a port that they're not actually changing that much. And there was just a lot of this stuff, just over and over again. It's like, yep, it's another $60 port. Yep, it's another $60 port. Yep, it's another $60 port. And it's just it's hard to swallow. Like, as a gamer, like, and I'm waiting for sales from Nintendo is like getting blood out of a stone as well with this stuff. So unless you're like one of those people, like my friend, like he's absolutely obsessed with Advance Wars, Like, he's going to buy that game for $60, even though to me it looks like a mobile game. Like, that could be free to play free, it really could. But it's just like, that's what they're relying on, is each of those people are willing to spend. And Nintendo have got such a breadth of IP that they can just continuously do this. So it's frustrating, but I have to applaud them at the same time for this business model that they've set themselves up with. Like, it's genius, but egregious as hell at the same time.
Yeah. Yes, and it's difficult for me to get for people that aren't Nintendo fanboys to get on the train. They're kind of like alienating people jumping on board and coming up on board. I mean, they didn't need to do that 100% and have no. They could have had one new IP and gone, hey, this is a new game with some new, aimed at getting new people to buy a Switch. And no Switch console, no
Switch Pro. Yep, that
really
was
shocked about that.
That was surprising.
That was rumored and rumored and rumored and rumored and rumored and rumored and rumored.
Yeah, I think they pretty much confirmed it though during the conference. Like, a lot of people missed it, but the fact that they came out and said, we're just going to be talking about our games today, that's them basically confirming, yes, there is a Switch Pro, but we're not talking about it today.
But we're just not going to talk about it.
It wouldn't surprise me if they didn't do in a month's time, around the same time that Sony is probably going to be putting out their state of play, that they just put out a whole video just for Switch Pro and that's it.
But they lied though, because they said we're going to talk about our games today, and the second to last thing they showed was a games console.
That's fair. That is a good point.
And they lied when they said, this is the last game we're going to talk about, and it was a games console. So they're liars. And then they showed Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there was probably a lot of I can't even say yeah, they were just
departments doing different bits and bobs.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't get the word out of my head.
Communication breakdown.
Right, yeah, I was studying Japanese all this morning, so my brain is just fried from English, so my apologies. But they're basically, it's just a load of different departments working on separate things, and they clearly didn't communicate with each other until it all came together, and you could tell that in a weird way. Because you're right, like, there was weird indiscrepancies like that, so who knows? We'll see.
But now they're in this situation, it's like, guys, we really need to make a Switch Pro now because everyone's expecting a Switch Pro, so we kind of have to make one now.
Yeah. Now that console is coming, and it would surprise me if it didn't come this year. But yeah, it remains to be seen when they actually announce it.
And the price and the spec, there's a lot of anticipation, and if it's 1080 and 30 FPS, do you know what?
Yeah.
What's it got?
It's tough. I mean, in our prediction videos, we had the wild expectation that they were going to show a Switch Pro and that there was going to be Game Pass on it. Like, if that happened,
or Steam.
I would have double dipped and got a fucking Switch Pro. Like, I would have, absolutely. But the fact that they didn't even show even a quarter of that sort of nuts, because we know it's coming. It's just,
this is the weird thing. I don't understand. If it exists. Why can't they just... And considering the whole of E3, like what we saw, they could have gone, hey, we've got a Switch Pro. Here's what it looks like. That's all we're going to show you for now, but it exists, and we're going to talk to you about it again later. People would have lost their minds, but this was just a fizzle, and they didn't need to do that. Like, surely they could have said it exists. Yeah,
I mean, they did that with a couple of things. I mean, look at Breath of the Wild 2. The fact that they didn't even give that game a title blew my mind. Like, really? You didn't even, you haven't even come up with a name for this thing yet? That's worrying, That's kind of surprising that you didn't do that. Like, just show us a title, you know? So when everyone's using it on Twitter or hashtagging it, or people are talking about it online, they ground it to something. Because what's going to happen now is the next, Breath of the Wild 2, as we're now calling it, will get a new name, and all of that stuff that they've been talking about.
All that data will just go out the window.
They're going to lose it all in the algorithm. It's gone. So it's fascinating that they didn't announce.
They're dragging their heels on that.
Yeah, very strange. But yeah, I think based on our reactions, Nintendo are probably the biggest disappointment.
Yeah, I left that video and I was a bit deflated and a bit like,
same.
What was for me there? Not much.
Yeah.
Other people had the complete opposite. It's just the world we're living in.
That's the way it goes.
And the last thing I guess to talk about is Starfield. The trailer, the cinematic trailer looked great.
All in game.
It was in game.
Yep.
Which is great.
Mm-hmm.
but we don't know whether or not they're just using the game engine to film some cool stuff, and none of it is going to be in the game. That's
Right.
possible.
Very possible. Considering the game's not coming out until the end of next year, still a lot to be done. They're in production year right now. Like, that's normally how it works. Like, the last 18 months of production, like the first 12 months of that 18 months is what we call production year, where everything is just ramped up to high. They're in the thick of it right now, basically. They are making that game like nobody's business. Then the 6 months like before release is just polish and release, age rating, content locks and all that sort of stuff. So not much production really gets done in that last 6 months. So they're in production year right now. Stuff is going to be changing a lot. Like, so I'd be really curious to see, and that's probably why they held off in retrospect, why they held off from gameplay and showing UI and stuff and just walking around in the game, because they know, like, by this time next year at E3, when they are going to do a blowout, like a Fallout 4 style blowout, which was probably one of the best E3 presentations ever made. Like, if anyone's interested, like, in sort of like marketing, production, how games design works, go back and watch the announcement. Well, not the announcement, but the reveal E3 conference for Fallout 4. It was perfect, and I mean perfect. Like, it's the best example of how to sell a game I've ever seen in my life, and it worked beautifully. And I think they're aiming to do that next year, and I think they needed to show something this year because Xbox need it. They needed more, and this is the best they had, unfortunately. Again, I think Xbox weren't really ready to show off all of their new IP, which they've just bought out, I guess. So this was like the best that they could do. So I get the disappointment, and I get at the same time that they were probably stuck between a rock and a hard place. So there's just this weird dynamic that sort of happened all at once. So it's tough.
It is tough. I watched the God of War one from like 2015, where they did the gameplay trailer, like fighting the trolls and the killing of the deer and all that sort of stuff. That was a spectacle, and they had the live orchestra.
Indeed.
That's how you do a game reveal.
Yeah.
And that was like fairly early on, really, because they had a couple of years left to make the game after that. I think it was 2015 or 2016.
I think they showed it off in 2016. I think
2016.
That's the E3 that you're talking about. And then in 2018 it was released. So
yes,
it was about a year and a half. So so the same sort of window of that Starfield thing. You're right.
And we didn't even see like a spaceship flying by. We didn't see any, developments. We didn't see any houses or marketplaces or any sort of environment.
Right.
That. I mean, we walked. They would look like they were on the moon, didn't they? So it was barren. I mean, it looked nice, but it didn't. It looked like one artist's work environmentally.
I think like, to give them credit, I think what they're aiming for is that, like I mentioned a minute ago, is that Fallout 4 style blowout, and they're just they're hoarding all of their chips, because next E3 is just going to be insane. Like, for Starfield, I guess, like that's going to be their moment, and they're going to have like a whole sort of segment dedicated to that game, like they did for Fallout 4, because Fallout 4 is the benchmark to how to sort of sell a game, and that was their first E3 conference Bethesda ever did as well.
And they set that bar. So
they set that bar, and it is yet to be surpassed, in my opinion. I don't think I've seen any game reveal that's done as well in terms of like how they try and sell a game. It's just it's a masterclass in how to sort of market the game. So I'm guessing that's why they were so conservative with what they didn't show. I guess so. It was it was a shame, but I think it's...
So that's kind of like the whole for me. It was just a bit of a shame. Like, I think we could have had more. And I think that it was a combination of, people were being overly cautious, maybe because it was the pandemic, maybe a bit to do with console generation, maybe a bit to do with what games there are available now, because a lot of people are still saying that the new generation is still a bit thin on the ground for worth taking the plunge.
Yeah, it's tough, because there's a lot of talk with Sony sort of backtracking on this as well. Even though it was reported yesterday that 9 million PlayStation 5s have already been sold, which is ridiculous. Like, in terms of how quickly they've gotten to that number, is sort of incredible. Even at that point, there's still like there's leaks coming out now that Demon's Souls remake has been rated for the PlayStation 4, so the backwards compatibility in that they're doing. a PlayStation 4 version of Horizon. There's going to be a PlayStation 4 version of the next God of War. It's like, are you actually going to take this step or not, sort of thing, you know? And if you don't take that step, then people aren't going to have the confidence to step into the next generations. And that goes for both sides. That includes Xbox as well. Like, you need to just take that step. But the interesting thing about Xbox, and I think what they did right in this respect, is that there is now there isn't just talk as Xbox actually announced this. And why they didn't announce this during that conference is, it sort of blows my mind that they didn't. But what they're doing is they're bringing xCloud to Xbox One, which is the previous generation. But what they're doing is they're actually going to basically allow you to play Xbox Series X games on Xbox One through the xCloud. So you're basically streaming next generation games on your old console.
On your old console.
Which is the much more elegant way of doing it, because it allows developers to still not have to be tied to Xbox One architecture anymore. And it's just like, okay, just go all in on Series X.
And see what you can do.
Go nuts. And they can still play it. They've still got the option to go back. And the way that is a much more elegant way of doing it, in my opinion. But maybe Sony will do something similar when they do announce something with if they reform PlayStation Now, or if they do something Game Passy.
That was it. You said they'd have to announce that, and so we still have to wait and see if they do announce something like that when they come up with it. And they've not even announced dates yet. We still don't have dates of when they're doing anything.
Nothing.
Again, which is not good for consumers.
Cool,
it's not good for us trying to figure out how to do a podcast.
So basically, they should be thinking about us. Like, how dare
why aren't you thinking about us and our 20 views?
Right. Very rude.
We've got those 20 people,
they need to know, goddammit.
But yes, I think that's pretty much wraps up everything that I wanted to talk about with the E3 this year. So unfortunately underwhelming.
Yeah, it was
lots of people really liked it, which is great, but we're kind of in the same boat where it was a bit
aggressively average is the best way I've heard it being sort of categorized over the past few days. Aggressively average, and I was like, that's pretty much how I
want Game Pass. Yeah, I want Game Pass more now.
I mean, that was like you mentioned. I think that was the winner of E3. Like, I don't ever like putting it on a platform sort of thing. Like Sony won E3 or Ubisoft won E3. Like, I don't like doing that. But like certain games or certain features, I think Game Pass is the clear winner here. Like, when after the conference, I was kind of like, it was an alright conference. But then when I actually started looking at everything that was coming out this year, like Flight Simulator and the new Forza and stuff like this, just all this sort of stuff, like there was just a massive list of stuff that's coming out over the next sort of 6 months. That I like at least 10 games. Like, I counted at least 10 games that I was going to buy.
Yeah,
that is in Game Pass. And
it's a big backlog already. You got your backlogs already happening,
right? Piling
up before they're even out yet, because you can't play them all at once. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting 6 months, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's only going to snowball. I think the way that Xbox sort of highlighted this was that they want a huge game coming out every quarter. So and they've kind of got the lineup to do that at this point, and it's only going to snowball. And it's only going to get better because they've just got game after game after game after game, and that's the good thing about throwing money at this problem. They've sort of gained a solution out of this, which is good for consumers because we get to just sign up to Game Pass and get all this cool stuff for $10 a month. Like, how much can you really complain? It's not anything to complain about, and I'm super excited about some of these games. I think they're going to be massive games. But yeah, I mean, there was a couple of
Halo. We didn't even talk about Halo.
Didn't even talk about Halo
online,
and that looks great. And the fact that it's got a free-to-play mode as well, it looks a lot better than it did. I think that game's going to be great. But outside of Halo, there's I'm now interested in Forza Horizon 5. I wasn't before, but I am now.
Yeah.
There was.
I told you that looked interesting, and at the time you were like, "Yeah, it looks okay."
Yeah, it looks like a racing game.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to play that."
Yeah, that looks cool now.
And now you're already hyped for it. That's good. I like that. That's
good. I mean, the biggest omission for me was Beyond Good and Evil 2 not being there was an omission, and also Hellblade 2. I really wish we saw a bit more of that, but I understand they're a small team. They're going to knock it out of the park when it's ready, but it's not ready yet. So
yes. And all this being said, for me, if any devs are listening,
all one of you,
take your time. Don't rush it. We want it when it's ready.
Let it cook.
Yeah. So that's the
keep
kind
the
of
oven
main
closed.
takeaway.
Let it cook.
So for all us moaning, like I prefer us to have terrible E3s every year if it meant that the games were ready when they were ready and people didn't crunch. Ratchet and Clank didn't crunch apparently. A couple of late nights here and there. That was interesting.
I think Sony are. Yeah, I am gonna buy it. I haven't gotten around to it yet because like I was getting E3 out of the way and we're quite busy at work at the moment. But once that's out of the way, I do want to buy it because it got reviewed really well. But I think Sony are trying to crack down on that whole crunch culture that they've got going on right now, unfortunately, which is very par for the course for games that are in that nature where they're very high quality in that respect. Like this just I mean, and I have varying opinions on crunch. It depends on the developers, like on the personal levels. Like you don't know, like if someone's got a family and they're crunching out of choice, then you know there's a load of weird dynamics to crunching and how it comes about and how it actually goes. Like from personal experience, it's not ever forced upon you. It's this sort of thing where it's like it is your choice 100%. They can't act on it. They can't like stop you from just going home or whatever like at the right time. There's laws against this in a lot of countries and they abide by them for good reason. But yeah, if you want to talk about crunch, like people should seriously consider not buying any more Japanese games because they've got a lot of crunch. Like a lot. Like I can't even estimate like how much crunch goes on in Japanese games industry. But like if you want to talk about mislabor of people, then that is the country to look at. So yeah, when Ratchet is not crunching, that's a good time to come. But there's more work to be done in other places. Like so, if that is a listener's passion to sort of be on the back of certain publishers that where they don't want that to happen, then yeah, look to the east a little bit because
I think it's a great thing that the game's got Ratchet and Clank's got really good reviews, and so it's just great news that the news is coming out. I've said news quite a few times in that last sentence. It's great news about the news that it's not had crunch, and that's great that it's a big, launch title window game. So it's had all those things going against it. Launch title game within that sort of same window as a launch title, 6 months ish. It's of its own type in the world of games at the moment.
Right.
No crunch. That's all good news.
Yeah,
good
I mean,
developer.
I probably have a theory about that. Like, I'm pretty sure that Ratchet and Clank was probably due to come out at release for the PlayStation 5. It was probably going to be a launch title alongside Miles Morales and Demon Souls. Like, that was probably going to be like the trio. Like, you've got something for everyone at that point.
Oh, okay. And it got pushed back.
Yeah, I can imagine it got pushed back, and they were sort of like, you know what, we should just let this thing cook and do it properly, and then we've got something for the summer. It wouldn't surprise me, but that remains to be seen. Still great news like that. People aren't crunching on this, and they're just giving it the time that it needs. And if it needs extra time, then give them extra time. Don't push this thing out the door or like overwork people to the point that they're killing themselves over it. Like it's not worth it at the end of the day, especially because now we've got a game without crunch and it's getting 9s and 10s. So the proof's in the pudding. There it is.
Exactly, because there was that old sort of rumor that only good games, all good games had crunch, and you couldn't get a good game without crunch.
Yeah,
and that was kind of like a bit of a argument for crunch, or at least
Yeah, I mean, I've never agreed with that side of the argument, but there are like young developers out there that don't have families and that are like staying up, that just want to work on the game constantly, and they like crunch, and that is the reality of it. Like, there are people that enjoy crunch. Like, I know that sounds weird and horrible, but it's the truth, and that does not justify crunch happening, because there's obviously the opposite side of the fence where there's older people that have got families and kids, they want to get home, they've got responsibilities, they shouldn't ever be forced to. However, if there is a choice to do whatever people want to do, then that's probably not a bad thing, and we've got to sort of dissect this and actually understand that, like, a lot of these companies, like the company that I work at, we don't crunch like at Ubisoft. We just don't, not really. There are people that stay behind or want to work later, but it is entirely their choice, 1,000%. And I don't mean that in a corporate sense, like it's their choice. Like, no, I genuinely mean it. Like, there's people that just like, yeah, I'm just going to stay a bit longer because I actually want to work on this sort of thing. They're passionate about it. And then there's other people that are like, oh, it's 5, peace out, I've got to go and pick up the kids from school, and they just leave, and that is completely accepted. and that's just how it should be. And it's the unfortunate situation where the communication of that gets lost with some companies, and sometimes it is malicious, but it's I think it's getting better either way.
And yeah, different countries have different cultures towards this, and it's interesting when you have companies that are international and span different country
I've been
cultures.
in that boat.
And yeah, because you've worked in Japan and you've worked in Montreal.
Yeah, working at Ubisoft in Japan, it was very much like you would see the Japanese staff stay late without even being asked, and they would just stay. And when I mean stay late, I mean 10, 11 o'clock at night, sometimes overnight. And that's not anything to do with Ubisoft. It's just, and then on the other side of the room where all the foreigners are, like people from America and England and things like that, it's like, oh, it's 5:30, peace, and they just leave. And that's just like within the same studio even, it's just a really strange dynamic between different cultures and how it sort of works. But yeah, absolutely. It very much depends on where people are in the world and what they do. So yeah.
The way I come down to it is, I understand that some people like to crunch and they enjoy it, and it's something that they like to do. To me, because we know that, and there's evidence to suggest that if you work too many hours in a day, it affects your health.
Sure.
Just treat it like a health issue. Yeah. And it's like, go home at 5 because otherwise it's unhealthy. And as a company, they're responsible for the health of their employees, ultimately. And if a company allows employees to work late, that's morally, wrong.
Yeah.
And to me, it's as simple as that. To me, it's as simple as do your work hours, do your contracted hours, make sure the contracted hours are healthy. Anything you work over that is unhealthy for the employee.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like with...
It's unfortunately, I have quite a simple, blunt...
I totally respect that. It's interesting because we have a sort of a mixed culture as well, like in the video games industry. Like the studio that I work in, if you're at the studio past a certain time, they literally just turn off the lights, sort of thing, and it's just like go home, sort of thing. And when I say like because this is the part of the communication that we've sort of lost when it comes to the conversation of crunch, is there's a difference between crunch and overtime. And when you do overtime, it's like an extra 2 hours in the office, right? And it's like, okay, I've worked overtime, you're getting compensated for it. If you want to take the overtime, if you actually want to do the overtime, then you get compensated for it. Crunch, in my opinion, is like when it's 3 o'clock in the morning, people are sleeping at their desks, like that's crunch, like that's not good, that's not healthy whatsoever. A bit of overtime isn't the end of the world, but it's kind of this weird, I don't know, it's just such a tough conversation to have with people sometimes because they're very opinionated about it, and there's a lot of grey areas to it in terms of like overtime and crunch and how it should be treated and what cultures you're in and what company you're with and what you're working on, how you're working on it, what department you're even working in, like what sort of crunch are you doing. There's a lot of weird dynamics to this, so it's tough. But yeah, well, it's a discussion for another
topic
time.
For another,
definitely
for sure.
But yeah, it's very good news that Ratchet sort of avoided that this time, especially with like all the talk around Naughty Dog and how they have been working on The Last of Us and stuff like that, and just people they're notorious for overtime and crunch and stuff. So it's good that they're sort of clean up their act at that publisher at least. So
you always see jobs go in there, like there's always advertising for jobs, so it's got high turnover. So that's just, there's that whole argument which we can't get into now. Take too long. Too long.
Indeed. We'll talk about that another time. Yeah. we'll have a crunch discussion at some point now. That'll be a good one. Well, cool. Yeah. So shall we wrap this thing up?
We can wrap it up. So yeah, comment, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, then don't do those things. Were we right? Were we wrong? Did we miss something? Were we blaringly not talking about?
Yeah, I mean, what were you guys interested in as well? Like, if something really jumped out at you at E3 and we just completely brushed over it today, like, please let us know. Like, we're curious to see what other people are excited about, because there was obviously a lot of people excited about Nintendo stuff, which we were just like straight up at the top of our heads, like we don't know. Like, what else like really jumped out at you as like such a huge announcement? Like, we'd be really curious to hear.
Yeah. Definitely. Yes, and stay tuned, and we'll have another episode next week for you.
Indeed.
But until then, where can we find you, Vin?
You can find me on Twitter. I am at Hillthought Games. You can also find me on ArtStation. I am Vin Hill Art on there. So if you're into concept art and things like that, then you can come and give me a follow. Also, I'll probably give you a follow back because I like seeing cool art. Chris, where can people find you, sir?
On Twitter, I am at Acrylic Pixel, and YouTube, I am Acrylic Pixel.
Very good. Okay, until next time,
So
guys.
with that, take care.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.